back to season 2 of Bloody Besties. I am your host, Ruby Wilde.
And I'm Melissa May.
And today, the topic that I gave Melissa
is how do you get knighted?
Yes.
Or knighted?
Something along those lines. How do you become a sir?
Okay, so to get knighted, you need to make a significant contribution to your country or community in a field like arts, science, medicine, charity, or public service, demonstrating exceptional achievement and sustained dedication, which will then be recognized by the monarch through a nomination process. It usually results in an investor ceremony.
That sounds weird. Oh, that's where they do the
Sure.
sword thingy.
Which is normally dubbed a knight with a sword.
Yes. Okay. I didn't know that it was like a thing that you had to like get nominated for. I wonder who does the nominations.
Typically considered one of the highest honors in the United Kingdom and is awarded based on merit. Someone can nominate you for a knighthood, usually through the government, providing evidence of your contribution.
So you don't have to be a knight to recommend a knight?
A committee will review your nomination and decide if you meet the criteria for a knighthood.
Granted, we're dumb Americans, so I don't know how the British monarchy works, but the entire reason that I had you look that up is because we kind of have a mystery today. I know how much you love those.
Unsolved.
And it involves someone who has been knighted.
Fun.
So let's get started. The morning of July 8th, 1943, Harold Christie, a Bay Street real estate tycoon who was 62, was a family friend who had been staying at the house that night. I don't know why I said that, like at the house. Nobody knows what house I'm talking about yet.
Did you say Bay Street?
No, he's a Bay Street real estate tycoon. I don't know. It's Bay Street. I didn't look that up. But he went to wake the owner of the house, his friend, Sir Harry Oakes. And he was waking him up for breakfast because he was still asleep in his home in his bedroom in Nassau, the Bahamas.
Okay. I was just in the Bahamas.
Yeah. So Nassau, Jamaica. Whenever Harold, the real estate man, spent the night, the pair would share a breakfast on the ocean terrace. So they had like their whole routine. So he went to go wake him up. He was like, dude, why are you still sleeping? You're ruining our system. Well, there was no answer when he knocked. So he decided to just open the door. He saw smoke, ran to the bed, and found his friend's clothes had been burned off, but his body was still warm. I don't know if it was still warm from the fire or if he had only been there for a little bit amount of time. That's to be determined.
Wild.
Yes. He lifted his friend's head to prop it up on a pillow while he grabbed a glass of water and poured it into his friend's mouth, thinking that it would actually revive him. He then grabbed a towel and started to wipe his friend's face because his face was covered in blood. So he basically just thought like some tragedy happened and he was just trying to revive his friend, thinking that he wasn't dead, just that like his body was still warm. And so he was like, let me help you, like make you comfortable, all that kind of stuff. Because we're in 1943, you don't exactly know, don't touch kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he was wiping his friend's face down, and then he went to the porch and called for help when he figured out he couldn't revive Sir Harry. And now Sir Harry's wife and children were in the United States at this time, and Harry was due to fly out to meet them the next day on the 9th. So he was found on the 8th. He was due to fly out on the 9th. And when questioned, Harold claimed that any bloodstains in the room could have been transferred by him after he touched Sir Harry because he was so distraught he couldn't recall what he touched, what he moved, anything, as one would be confused. This is, of course, after the fact. So he went for help, and then he told the police once they arrived, because obviously things aren't how they're supposed to be. He said, I never heard anything that night. There had been a storm that night, and that was the only thing that prevented the fire from spreading through the rest of the home.
This is way too fishy.
Like I said, we'll get there. Now, the autopsy showed, because obviously he was dead, it showed shock and hemorrhage around the brain due to 4 fractures of the skull that was caused by a blunt instrument, as well as a well-defined edge, according to to Dr. L.W. Fitzmaurice from Canada. Dr.
Said it right.
Oh, I know. I really wanted to say
Canada.
Canada. It's because I'm actually reading it and not going off memory this time, as well as Dr. Q.A. The burns on his body were stronger on his left side, legs, and face. Now, Quackenbush, that's his name,
I like it.
from Montreal, said that he saw burns on the carpet when he entered the room and on the face of the wardrobe. He said Sir Harry was laying face down, diagonal across the bed, and he had determined that the man had been dead around 2 to 5 hours. So this is the investigator that went.
So I learned by listening, if usually in dead body with the fire, if they're face down, it's because they're crawling to get out, typically. But if you find them face up, they weren't trying to get out of the fire. They say most dead bodies are found face down in a fire.
Yes. Or in that pugilistic stance or the boxer stance.
Yeah. And tendons like shrink up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like a lot of people think that they're like in a fighting position.
Yeah.
Well, they're not actually fighting. It's just your body getting
shrinking,
dehydrated, like you would, like if you think about dehydrating
like
jerky.
I do every weekend after binging. Dehydrated.
Pretty much, yes. All sucked up. But sometimes, and then like it also depends on if you have burns on the front or not. If you have no burns on your front, then chances are you were already face down when the fire started. But in this case, he did have burns on his face. So to me, it's weird that he was face down when Harold said he propped him up on a pillow, meaning he was obviously face up because he was wiping the blood off his face and pouring the water into his mouth. Again, we're going off of what everybody says when they walked in and they saw what happened. Now, let's give you a little bit about Sir Harry Oakes. He started his life December 23rd, 1874 in Sangerville, Maine, and he was obviously not a sir when he was born. He was Harry Oakes. He was the son of a lawyer in Maine, and he was one of 5 kids. In the 1880s, the family moved to Foxcroft so the kids could attend an academy there, and it was supposed to be like the best high school in the country, so they wanted to give him a good start. He graduated from Foxcroft, which was renamed Dover Foxcroft Foxcroft in 1922. Just if anybody lives in Maine and they're like, that's wrong. No, I'm not. In 1892, he went to, I know I'm saying this wrong, Bowdoin College in Brunswick. And then he moved on to Syracuse University Medical School for 2 years until he left in 1899. That's when he moved to Canada with gold stars in his eyes, literally, because there was a gold rush and he wanted to become rich. So he leaves med school to go off and start panning for gold. And he was not afraid of hard work on his path to millions. And he wound up, like, he started mining for other people. He was also a flaxseed farmer and a medical technician because he did have some medical training. And all the while, he believed his true path to greatness was prospecting. He went on and what he did was kind of novel because he studied the soils and the rocks. And based on like the sediments and everything in the area, he figured which ones were more likely to have gold, because as we know, gold isn't, wherever willy-nilly. It's in certain areas. I'm not going to go in depth on that. A lot of people don't care. But yeah, so he was really novel and he wound up like studying all of the geology and it worked. In 1912, he found a gold vein in a place called Lakeshore. And there were reports that he would actually retaliate against those who wronged him. Like, duh, I would. And an example of this was when he was still trying to get his company up and running for harvesting this gold vein. And he was trying to get his supplies on credit. And a store owner, he said no. And he was like, you're ridiculous. I'm not doing this because you're never going to strike it rich. Why on earth would I extend you credit that I know will never get paid back? So when he started striking it rich, he made sure that no one with his mining company, or any of his associates ever did business with that shop again, and it put him out of business.
Wow. Was he a Scorpio?
Right? No, he was Sagittarius. Wait, is that? No, it's the one after Sagittarius because it was December 23rd. Oh, I'm bad. I don't know which one it is. Is it Virgo?
December 23rd is my mom's birthday.
Oh, then you should know what your mom is.
I don't know.
I'm telling. Wait, she listens. Melissa doesn't know what your horoscope
What's
is.
the word? Gonna Google it.
Well, while you're doing that, that was just an example. So he literally put someone out of business just because they wouldn't extend him a line of credit when he was getting started. He also was not known to be a kind boss, and people often quit or were fired. So he did have a little bit of a spicy personality, if you will. It was very Scorpio.
Capricorn.
Okay, so he was a Capricorn. Is that a fire sign, water sign, earth sign? I'm real bad at.
It looks like a ram with a fish body.
I'm guessing maybe earth sign. It doesn't matter, but I just only learned.
She's worse than me, though. So you
Yeah,
do not want to get on her side. Bad
no,
side.
that's why I'm thinking it might even be a fire sign, which I thought Scorpio was until maybe just like 3 years ago. I am way too old to realize that Scorpio is a water sign. Like way too old. I always thought it was a fire sign. I will fully admit that that's how little I know about it. And I even have a scorpion tattoo.
Yeah.
It was my first tattoo. Very first one paid for by my mom.
Oh my god.
And I know nothing about my horoscope. I just knew it was something that wasn't going to change in my life.
My first tattoo is my Slipknot tattoo.
Well, when did you get that?
No regrets.
No regrets. When did you get that?
Probably 2000, late 99, 2000.
Okay, yeah. Mine was for my 18th birthday. My mom bought it was my gift.
I had to hide it from my grandma.
Yet nobody in my family got to say anything because I only have one immediate family member that doesn't have a single tattoo. And that's one of my sisters.
I know.
Everybody else is tattooed.
I know.
Even my grandpa was tattooed because he was in the Navy
Military.
during, Navy and World War II. It is what it is. But okay, back to Sir Harry Oakes. He was, a spicy boss, but he knew what he was doing. And he was wealthy enough now to start enjoying his 40s. He started cruising around South Africa. And while he was doing that, he met his love, Eunice McIntyre, in 1923. She was born in Sydney, Australia, November of 1898, and was working as a bank clerk there at the time. So, like, he was just cruising around, and they met, and they were just like, let's make this work, even though you live in Canada. And so, yeah, they married that year in Australia, and they started to make a family together. They decided to move to Canada to grow their family and their reputations. And while there, he renounced his United States citizenship. And that was because he was trying to make a bid to become a part of the Canadian Parliament. In order to become a member, you can't have the dual citizenship, or at least during this time. It didn't work, though, because he was rejected.
Oh.
He did have a stint with Eunice in Niagara Falls in 1928, and he purchased a home there that was previously owned by Paul Sholkoff, who was the president of the Niagara Falls Power Company. So you know that it was a good house because he'd be rich.
Yeah.
The house was rebuilt into an estate with 35 rooms, 17 bathrooms, and even had air conditioning for the time.
It
So
better
this is
come with a maid, too.
I'm sure.
Cannot clean all that.
I'm sure. I've always wondered when they say 35 rooms. Okay, because how we describe houses, it's like 4-bed, 3-bath. In this one, they did separate the bathrooms. But when they say 35 rooms, is that 35 bedrooms, or are they including like den, living room, kitchen? I never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Technically anything can be a bedroom if you sleep in it.
Right. And we're recording in a closet.
Yes, we are. Yeah. By the way, if you notice a little bit of a change in sound, we are now at the Triple Shot Ranch recording studio, which is Alyssa's closet. We just figured it was going to be a good sound buffer because of clothing.
There's worse closets we could be sitting in.
Truth. And I hear plenty of podcasts that are recorded in closets. No lie. And again, we're indie and we don't make money yet.
Yeah.
Yet being the operative word. Coffee. True. So Harry built a road parallel to the Canadian Southern Railroad tracks to replace the previous road that was demolished. And that was for its construction. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Whatever. We all know how, like, when one road gets destroyed, but you have enough room to build another road right next to it rather than fix the destroyed road. Sometimes it's cheaper just to put, start from scratch. So that's what he did with the railroad. And his construction, he paid workers $2 per day for work. which is insane for the time.
Oh, like good?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, think about it. These people were making probably $2 a week at tops, like anywhere else. This is the 1920s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. He donated 16 acres to make Oaks Park. Harry was upset with the high tax system that was in place in Canada, so he decided to become a citizen of the Bahamas, which was now part of the United Kingdom, and it had no income tax. So he just keeps bouncing from different citizenships to just try and figure out what he wants to do. But he was really well business minded, and he was like, why am I paying all this money to a country when I don't have to?
And they wouldn't even accept him as a citizen, right? In Canada?
Well, they accepted him as a citizen. They just didn't want him to become a part of their parliament.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, during all of this, like while all of this is happening from Canada to Niagara Falls to the Bahamas, they had 5 children. And that was from 1925 to 1932. Really quick, their names were Nancy, Sydney, Shirley, William, and Harry. Now, don't worry, I'm going to give you like their backstory later. Now's not the time because they all have their own. That's why I said really quick. The move was a great thing for the Bahamas because he went hog wild and just started spending his money left and right. He expanded the airport in Nassau. He developed housing projects, built hotels and golf courses, and even installed a bus system. So he was paying for labor and giving them a lot of infrastructure as well. They loved him. Like he was one of the expats that they were like, please join us and build our economy. He even donated $500,000. Again, we're talking like, I believe now we're in the 1930s, to St. George Hospital in London. And that would be equivalent to $9 million in today's money.
Wow.
Yeah, just donated, which we know isn't a tax write off because they didn't have income tax.
Oh, no.
Well, like he just did it out of the goodness of his heart. Now, while in the Bahamas, he did buy a bunch of land. There are more stories about his conduct while there. Now, remember that we were talking about how fierce he was, but he would only allow the blacks to work at the British colonial hotel that he owned. And when he couldn't find enough employees to manage the hotel, he provided a training center.
So you mean like the native Jamaican?
Yep.
Okay.
Or any immigrants of that color.
Okay.
But he was very specific. You had to be black if you wanted to work there. And if you didn't have the education or training, he would provide it. After donating over $1 million to charity in the Bahamas, King George VI, he took notice, and that's what granted him knighthood in 1939, declaring him the first baronet of Nassau, and that's when he became Sir Harry Oaks. Now we know everything that has to go behind that in order for him to finally get knighted. Lots of money, apparently.
Yes. And he excelled in mining and
He was definitely, yeah, he was a self-starter. He did good. Eunice wanted a summer in cooler climates than the Caribbean, so he bought her a quote unquote cottage in Bar Harbor, Maine called The Willows in 1938. Now we all know when you name your house, it ain't a cottage.
It's probably 12 bedrooms,
Right?
5 baths,
It's just a small little
a bungalow.
a little hovel, 1 bedroom flat. Eunice and the children would stay there during the spring. Harry would join them in the summer. And that's why the family wasn't with him at the time of his murder, because he was getting ready to join them for the summertime uh, sojourn, if you will, because we're at July 8th. In 1943, he was considered one of the richest men in the world, owning the second largest gold mine on the planet. Not in Canada, not in America, on the planet. Now, depending on who you ask at the time, you would have 2 different answers as to the type of man he was. He was either a mellowed multimillionaire living his best life in wealth at the age of 68, or he was a tyrant, a drunkard, stubborn, and ready to fight all of those who had a problem with him. But we've started noticing that juxtaposition through his self-starter times and like his donation and charity work. But to me, one's business and one's personal.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes in order to be a good businessman, you have to be ruthless if you want to make money. And in order to make that money for you to be able to donate to the charities, it's kind of, you can't be one without the other.
I get that.
Do with that what you will. A few more puzzle pieces to put into place before we continue with the murder were a couple of other influential men who happened to be in Nassau at the time. The first was Count Alfred de Marigny. He was a European count. He was known as a playboy, and he was in the Bahamas due to war. He was avoiding the war, so he went to the Bahamas. When I say playboy, he was the type of man who had some money working finance, so he divorced his first wife, Lucy Alice Cahan, after 4 months in 1937 in order to marry his banker's wife, Ruth Behenstock Schermerhorn, in 1937. This couple moved to Nassau and they divorced. And that's when Eunice, Harry's wife, invited the now single Freddie, which is what he went by, to dinner. This was when the 30-year-old Freddie met their 15-year-old daughter, Nancy. A couple of years later, the couple was engaged, and the day after she turned 18, the couple eloped in New York City, May of 1942. These days, we call that grooming. Obviously, the family and the Count were not exactly happy with each other because Sir Harry did not approve of him, because he was grooming his daughter. Nancy was pregnant at one point, but her parents believed that she was too ill or young to carry the baby. She had contracted a virus, so they encouraged her to terminate the pregnancy. The Count believed they just didn't want her to have his baby, because then he would be tied to the multi-millions that the family had. Around this time, it is also told that Sir Harry changed his family's will, essentially making it impossible for Freddie to get any of their money, because they figured that that's kind of what the whole thing was.
Yeah, gold digger.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he really did love Nancy. The other character that was there at the time was the Duke of Windsor. He was born Edward in 1894. His father was in line to become the king, meaning that he was in the succession line when his father passed. He went by the name David, and he continued with this nickname through his adulthood. When his father was crowned King Edward V, so this man's dad is the king, he crowned his son Prince of Wales. His father died January 1936, making him King Edward VIII. He was known to be indifferent to Hitler. He would make anti-Semitic remarks, and there is a record of him even sending a thank you letter to Hitler and showing him and his new bride around Germany. Just to let you know what type of person he is. Again, I just report the facts. My opinions are my opinions alone. That's part of our disclaimer.
Yeah, so listen to the disclaimer.
In 1930, he met Bessie Wallace Warfield Simpson at a dinner, and he was smitten. She had first been married to Navy pilot Earl Spencer. They divorced shortly after. In 1928, she married husband number 2, a British-American, Ernest Simpson, and it was during this marriage that she had met Edward. In 1934, he brought her to meet his parents, and scandal began because she wasn't divorced yet. Their son, the prince, the parent's son, obviously, was courting a twice divorced, well, they thought twice divorced, technically one time divorced, currently married adulterer. And when he was crowned king in 1936, he realized he couldn't have both his country and his love. That's impossible. We all know, like, the trials and tribulations that Camilla, there was like a whole debacle with like Camilla and Princess Diana, and they had to check like her womanhood was intact before she got married into the royal family. And
oh
yeah, it was like a whole thing.
What is that lady's name? Dark hair?
No, not Meghan Markle.
Okay.
I'm talking about the one before. What's his face's dad, who had his
heck.
Yeah, who's now king.
Yeah.
I know our British listeners are going to be like screaming at us. I apologize.
Bloody hell.
I try so hard to know about everything, but politics are not what I'm good at. I'm good at science. But back to the story. He couldn't have both his country and his love. So he was able to abdicate his throne in December that year, and that made his brother King George VI, and that was the one who knighted Sir Harry Oakes. In 1937, he was made the Duke of Windsor, and that's when he married Wallace that June. So he was able to have his love and still have a title. He just wasn't king anymore. So it lets you know he chose love over status, which that's something he did that was cool.
I'll let him have that.
Yes. Eyebrows, yes. There's a bunch of speculation and scandal with his and her association with the Germans during World War II, but it has nothing to do with the story, really. So just know that the rumors are out there and I'm not covering it. It has nothing to do with it. He was then appointed the governor of the Bahamas, and the couple moved there August 1940, and he stuck up their noses at the accommodations of the governor's residence. I guess he is used to, the palace. This is what brought Sir Harry Oakes running to, quote unquote, save them from the decrepit estate of a governor.
I can't with these people.
I know. We're not rich like them. He already had multiple homes on the island, so he let the couple live in one while the home they were to occupy was getting renovated to their liking. So no matter what, they got to stay in a bougie estate. So now that we have everyone in play, we're back to the night that Sir Harry Oakes was killed. The Duke Edward did not think that it was his job for the locals, or didn't think it was a job. Local police. He flew in Captain Edward Melchin and Detective James Barker from the Miami City Police. And that's because the Duke had met the captain on a previous trip to Miami and believed that he was better suited for the job of investigating the murder. When they arrived, Detective Baker lifted a single print from the right hand little finger. By the way, did you know that?
Yeah, you told us.
Oh, I did. Sorry.
Not a pinky.
It's not a pinky, it's a little finger. And that was from the only suspect that they believed that they had, which was Count Alfred, Freddy. This was recovered from paper-covered wooden screens. So it's like one of those Asian partitions that people can dress behind.
Like bamboo?
Yeah, like with the paper. And so that's where they collected the fingerprint from. The print's going to come into play later, but they went to question the Count anyway. He said he was at home the night that Sir Harry Oakes was murdered, and that while they were there, he had his own dinner party, and he drove home two of the guests that were at his dinner party at around 1 a.m. He then went to his house where he promptly fell asleep. He woke up when he heard a fight between his dog and a guest's cat, but he fell back asleep and he didn't learn of the murder until the following day. Since there were plenty of people who saw the Count that night, because he had a dinner party, they were able to tell the police what he was wearing. But when the police asked for his clothing, the Count was unable to find the shirt that he had been wearing at the dinner party the night before.
He got rid of it.
Melchin stated that Freddy had singed hairs on his arms, as many as 3 out of 10 when they were microscopically examined. So like when you notice, and all of us have had singed hair at least once. So he kind of took them and looked at them under a microscope and saw 3 out of 10 were singed.
I've singed my eyelashes before.
The fake ones or the real ones? Alfred explained that he obtained the burns when he was scalding chickens at his chicken farm, and it also happened when he was lighting 4 hurricane lamps at his home, or they were from a barbershop.
Nope. Maybe. I've scalded chickens, and it's not that. There's no way.
I don't know. The Count was arrested and put on trial because everybody was having the same questions as you. He spent the trial with his feet on the bars of the dock that he was seated on. So very relaxed. It's like picture just chucking your feet up on the desk, hands across your stomach, looking on with complete disinterest.
That's not going to win a jury over.
He was defended by Godfrey Higgs, who brought forth opinions from other experts who said that the lifted print could not have come from the screen. And I assume that's because there was no texture that was underlying the impression. If you think about it, all paper is textured, including that wax paper that would be covering the screens. So there's something there. And so when you dust it and then you tape lift it, there will be a base texture underneath, and then the print would be part of that. And so you would have to kind of ignore the base texture. Well, this print didn't have any texture on it. But it being a wax coated, like it says paper, but we all know that it's not just paper. If you've ever seen one, it's kind of like coated in some form of wax.
To preserve maybe the painting that's painted on it.
Mm-hmm. And paper's just going to get destroyed immediately.
Humidity.
It was their belief that it was lifted from a glass. So they waited for him to grab a glass. And then when he was done grabbing it, they lifted the print off of that glass that they knew was going to be his. That's what the defense is saying. Dr. Leonard Huggins, who was a bacteriologist who had examined the Count 6 days after the murder, he didn't find any signs of burned hair or blisters that were previously noted. So 6 days later, no burned hair, no blisters. In addition to the evidence falling apart, the motive was not firmly established either, because the Count did admit to disliking his father in law and even threatened to beat his head in. There's been plenty of people that we have, in the heat of rage, just be like, oh my gosh,
Like, beat your ass.
pretty much. Yeah.
And he did have blunt force trauma when they found him,
Mm-hmm.
and a sharp force too, right? Did you say a sharp one?
Yes. Like I said, in the heat of the moment, if you're arguing with somebody, I know I have said things that could be misconstrued at a later date if something tragic had happened to that person.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I would hit them with my car if I could.
Throat punch you.
Okay. You whistle, I'm going to throat punch you.
You eat loud? I'm throat punching.
Oh,
Yes, I have that disorder.
misophonia.
Defense is doing a good job then.
Yep. And the people who put forth, like, he just wanted the money, they were wrong, because Eunice admitting to making sure that all the money Nancy would inherit would be in a trust that the Count couldn't touch. He would never get any money. He wasn't in the will, and Nancy's money was protected from him. The commissioner at the time of the investigation, Lieutenant Colonel R.A. Erskine Linhop, was transferred to Trinidad before the trial, and he didn't give evidence because at that time, okay, so there's like this whole law thing that happens now that when we testify, it has to be the person who conducted the investigation or the test that needs to testify, because the people have the right to confront their accuser or whatever. Recently, there was another case that happened in Arizona that now makes it so, like, say I do the testing in my forensic lab and somebody else verifies what I've done. I still have to go testify to my work. It used to be that my verifier could testify as well because they did the equal amount of work. That's no longer allowed unless, like, I die. But normally, then you still have to have somebody rework what you did, which is why I keep having to fly back to testify on old cases,
Right.
because it's people's rights. Well, in this case, you didn't have to do that. They didn't want to fly this guy back from Trinidad, so he never showed up in court. During the trial, it was put forth that they believed that the detectives had not looked into Harold or Harcourt Mara, who was the stable master. So Harold was the real estate tycoon who found him. That, again, he said, like, he did. He moved him, he cleaned him, but when other people went in, he wasn't moved or cleaned. So we've got that. And then the stable master, who obviously was there, had access, and he was never questioned about anything ever. The detective stated that they didn't look into them, and though Harcourt admitted that he had ill will toward Harry, so we all know he's a bad boss, like, not a bad boss, he's a good boss. He's just, you get what I mean. He's a mean boss.
Hey, he's not your friend. He's your boss.
Exactly. He said, I didn't commit the murder. And so they were like, okay, you didn't commit the murder. Like you said, the defense is doing good work. At the end of the trial, the jury voted 9-3 for acquittal, but all was not good because the jury voted unanimously that Freddie should be deported. They did not want him in Jamaica anymore. They had only taken 1 hour and 45 minutes to deliberate after hearing the 5.5-hour charge. So at the end of every testimony, because you admitted you don't do jury duty, at the end of every trial, after the defense rests, that's the last thing, is the defense rests. There's like actually a whole thing. Sometimes the prosecution can be the last person speaking, but again, we're not going to get into that. This is not a trial episode. But then the judge addresses the jury and basically says, like, when you go back, the deliberations are going to be on this charge for this man, blah, blah. 5.5 hours of jury instruction.
So they were tabling his deportation as part of this as well?
Mm-hmm.
Is that normal?
No.
It's kind of funny.
Normally, I don't think I've ever heard of a jury able to deport somebody from the country. So the Chief Justice who gave the 5.5-hour charge was Chief Justice Sir Oscar Bedford Daly. And he was the one who pointed out the weakness of the evidence. He was listening, because that is part of the judge, is, to listen to everything. And he was all judges have also been lawyers. So it's one of those things. And he was like, hey, just so you know, what I was hearing, this ain't a strong case.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the defense did enough for reasonable doubt. If I was on the jury, I would think that it was enough. Because he was found not guilty, he was immediately released, and he and Nancy left the courtroom before they even heard the deportation recommendation. So they didn't hear about it until later. But the recommendation, because again, that's what it is, it had no legal standing. The authorities were like, we listened to the people. You're going to get deported.
Whoa.
But they said the only place that they could actually send him would be to the Indian Ocean Mauritius, where his family and with the titles had settled during the French Revolution. Because again, he was in the Bahamas because of the war. And they were like, well, you have to go with family. So the only place that we're going to put you, because you're no longer in France, is here. Again, it's a whole little convoluted thing, but we're not here for that. So instead of having them, like the country, resettle him, they decided to resettle themselves. They went to Cuba and then they moved on from there. Sir Harry's wife, Eunice, never remarried, and she stayed in the Bahamas until her death in 1981 at the age of 82. The question still remains, who was the killer? He was acquitted. The Count had his own theory, saying that he saw house guest Harold in the company of two men driving away from the scene that night. But how and when he claimed that he saw that when he said that he was in bed at his own home 5 miles away. Why does he think this? He says Harold, Sir Harry, and the Duke were planning to smuggle millions of dollars out of the Bahamas into Mexico. And when Sir Harry backed out of the plan and planned instead to go to the authorities to tell them about the smuggling, that the men planned his murder. Some say that those millions were supposed to go to the Nazis, because remember, the Duke is all about that. Rumors about the Duke do factor into the story. And that was because the FBI came forward showing that the Duke was associated with Hitler and other affiliations. This is where the Marburg papers come up. They were discovered by American troops who found abandoned vehicles containing the archives from the Nazi government in 1945. Again, more. These documents, also named the Windsor Files, had pages of correspondence between the Duke and Nazi Germany with talks about putting the Duke back on the throne. It's like a whole drama. I swear, Bridgerton has nothing on this. Amongst other plans that involved him and his wife that the Germans were willing to do with support, which millions of dollars in the 1940s would have helped. Another theory was that Harold was the one who wanted to back out, so he killed Harry to prevent the Nazis from getting the money. In 1972, Marshall Houts, in his 1972 book, Who Killed Sir Harry Oakes, it was Lucky Luciano's associate, Meyer Lansky, as he wanted to build a hotel in the Bahamas, and Harry was preventing this. We all know, everybody should know who Lucky Luciano is. He's a famous gangster during the Prohibition era. It said that he sent henchmen to the estate with the intention to rough him up, but it went too far and he was killed. And then Mayer tried to frame the Count for the murder. And that's why the fingerprint that was so perfect and didn't have any texture on it was placed at the scene.
Okay.
PI Raymond Schindler was hired by Nancy, who was the daughter, in 1943 to find out what happened with her father's murder. The private investigator. Just in case. The PI's questions that remained were why Harold waited so long to contact authorities. Why did the Duke tell the Miami detectives that he believed it was suicide, which he did, preventing them from bringing the proper equipment for an investigation? Yes, I glossed over that, but oh well. Who told the night watchman that they could have the night off? Because there was a night watchman on the property who was not there that night. Why wasn't there more blood? If he was beaten in the head wounds bleed profusely. There was multiple strikes. When you have blunt force trauma, first strike causes the bleeding, second strike causes cast off. Most people don't know that, I've realized.
Right.
Even I was working a crime scene once and I said that to the investigator. And I was like, well, we know that at least it was 2 blunt force, blows. And he's like, well, how did you know that? And I said, because the first blow only breaks the skin, which means there's no blood on the weapon to cause cast off. If you have cast off, that's the second blow.
So is that in the same spot, or?
I mean, it's wherever the blood is. And when I say of course you can have blood from impact, which will cause blunt force spatter pattern, but you won't have cast off.
Right.
Because there's just not enough. In order to have cast off, you have to have enough blood to be able to fly off.
A little.
So there's your forensic lesson of the day.
I like it. They're my favorite.
I do what I can. But though the whole room was not burned because of the storm, nobody said anything about.
I don't get about because of the storm.
Well, you've seen like the estates, they're not usually closed.
So it's all just open walls.
Can be.
Or like a cabana.
Could be. I mean, there was a door because he had to open the door.
Yeah.
We stayed in a place before that had kind of a thatched roof. It had like one whole wall that was, it wasn't a wall. It was PG.
The 1930s of it all.
Yes. But yeah, nobody mentioned anywhere that there was blood spatter anywhere. But he had at least 4 injuries on his head. So where was the rest of the blood? Why was Harry's pistol not present on his bedside? And I only read this in one place that he was known to have one, so take that with a grain of salt. I like to have multiple sources for everything that I tell you. If it's not repeated multiple times by multiple news sources, I ignore it. And that's where the case stands.
All right.
I know, I'm so mean. Now we're going to wrap it up with all the characters involved in this twisted tale, because like I said, we would come back to the children. The Count and Nancy had their marriage annulled in 1949. She remarried in 1952 to a German baron. They divorced in 1956. She kept the title, moved on to husband number 3 in 1962, who was an English businessman, and she passed in 2005. The Count married Mary Morgan Taylor in 1952. They had 3 children. He died in 1998 in Texas, having written his own book on the case. I did not read it. Again, do with that what you will. Sir Harry's other children had tales of their own. Sydney, who was born in 1927 in Canada, became the 2nd baronet July 12, 1943. This was after her father's murder. I'm sorry, his father's murder. Sydney's a boy.
Oh.
He served from 1944 to 1948 because of World War II. He married Greta Harmon in 1948, and they had 3 children, Sir Christopher Oakes in 1949, Felicity in 1952, and Virginia Viveka in 1954. He then went on to marry Nancy Hoyt, so he married someone with his sister's name. That'd just be weird. I'm sorry.
Are we on the incest episode?
No, different Nancy. In 1960, they had one son named Pitt. He was the president of the Bahamas Automobile Club and founder of Nassau's racing team, Speed Weeks. Or, I'm sorry, Nassau's racing. So it's like the NASCAR of the Bahamas, Speed Weeks, which could explain how at the age of 39, he died August 8th, 1966 in Nassau, having crashed into a pole when he was unable to complete a turn.
Mm.
His oldest son, Christopher, was the one to inherit the title. That's why he's Sir Christopher. And another child had a tragic story. Shirley had become the VP director of the British Colonial Hotel Company Limited and the director of Butler's Bank, amongst other things. So she was pretty special. She married Alan Churchill Butler in 1961. She also got into a car accident in 1981. It left her in a coma and she passed in 1986. So she was in a coma for 5 years. Another child died early when William, who was born 1930, died in 1958 at the age of 27 from a coronary thrombosis, which was a complication from a liver ailment. He too had married a woman named Eunice, which was his mother's name, in 1956. Was there just a shortage of names at this point?
That's a popular name.
Eunice?
I think so. I've heard it a few times.
In this episode?
Maybe.
He had been visiting New York City on business when he passed. So he just at the age of 27. That's horrible. Harry, the other son. So we're just going through Sir Harry Oakes' sons, by the way. Harry continues to be successful in his many endeavors, and he worked with his mother as the principal of Welland Securities Company, and he owned and operated the Park Motor Hotel. In 1957, he married Christine Bosch, and they had 4 children. So last I checked when I wrote this episode, he's still alive.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you when I wrote this episode. Harold Christie, the guest, he died on a business trip to Germany in 1973 at the age of 77. And the Duke of Windsor, he died in 1972 in Paris from laryngeal cancer. Finally, the man who claimed to have lifted the print from the screen, James O. Baker, doesn't matter. He was cleared of anything unethical by the International Association of Identification. I am certified by them.
Yay.
It's a very hard certification to do, and I am certified as a crime scene investigator through them. And it's good for 5 years. That's the one that I studied for like months and then took that test. That took 3 hours.
Have you got your pay raise from that yet?
I did.
Okay, good.
I did.
That takes a year.
It was government. But yes, I'm very proud of that certification.
Yeah.
So, International Association of Identification cleared him of any wrongdoings. And when he was 49, he too was killed in 1952 by his own son, Dwayne. Dwayne claimed he shot him in a quote unquote domestic trouble scuffle in Homestead, Florida, over an argument about the fact that he claimed his father was a dope addict.
In Florida.
And I couldn't find anything else online about his murder or what happened to Dwayne. I only found that, I think I found like 3 or 4 articles on it. Because, of course, he's not as important, apparently, as Sir Harry Oakes. But yeah, it was a blip because it was a murder. But yeah, I think that's everyone involved. And I'm sorry if I didn't update you on any of the others. But there was a lot of people, and I figured I had to wrap it up, especially because a lot of them died tragically and with their lives cut short.
Right. That makes it interesting.
I mean, yeah, I told you this story. It's got nothing on Bridgerton. I need a movie or a miniseries about this. I'd watch it. I think there is one. I'll have to look it up. If you know of it, hit us up on our socials and let me know if there's been a movie or TV show based on the case of Sir Harry Oakes. I know that there's books, and yes, I read some of them, but I did what I could.
Wonderful.
Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned. We'll bring you another good case next week. Bye.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.